When I was 8 years old, my mother would take me to the local park. At that time, parks were a magical place for a boisterous child such as myself, and I would run the full length of it with glee. But I remember a corner of the park, out of the sight of my mother and her park friends, that had a certain darkness to it. The bushes were darker and greener, the trees seemed to be dead, and every time I went to that corner, a feeling of dread filled my body. One day, I went with my mother to the park as usual. I met some children playing football. Being an introverted child, when they kicked the ball over to me and asked me to play, I was wrapped in nerves and excitement, but I accepted. We played for what seemed like minutes, but judging by the sun beginning to set, it was probably hours. Mid-game, my mother called to me, "Time to go home." Knowing my mother, I understood asking for one last game was pointless, so I decided to have one last kick instead. A mistake that I regret to this day. The ball soared and then rolled into the dark area. Immediately, a feeling of dread washed over me as the children came running over to me, demanding that I get their ball back. I could see the fear in their eyes as they looked at where their ball went. Knowing I wasn't going to win an argument against them and feeling peer pressure, I made my way to the dark area. As I approached, I could see the ball was under a bush and weirdly partially covered by what appeared to be a black cloth. Halfway inside the dark area now, and within reaching distance of the ball, I saw the most terrifying sight I had ever seen in my life. An old man's head popped up above the bush. He had an elongated chin, white-grey stubble, and grey parted hair with cold, blue, dead eyes. At that moment, every fibre of my body told me to run, but I just didn't. I stood there in shock, and that was when he reached for me. He managed to grip my wrists, and at that moment, as if nature took a hold of me, I managed to raise my legs and kick his now noticeably bare chest with enough force to be freed from his grip. I fell to the floor, only to see him rushing towards me. At that moment, one of the boys who had gotten impatient called me, and as if shocked by the sound, the man hid. I immediately sprang to my feet and ran, with my wrist bleeding, out of the dark area. I immediately grabbed the boy and told him to run. I approached my mother, sobbing. She asked me what was wrong. I told her a man had grabbed me, and being the type of woman that she was, she immediately called to some of her park friends and marched with them to the dark area. When she came back, she had the football in hand. She told me she found the ball resting just outside the dark area. We never went to that park again, and many years later, one of the children I played with that day was found buried in the dark area. Strangely, my mother doesn't remember the dark area incident, but I do. And to the man I met in the park that day, let's not meet again.